Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ange if you haven't met me before, and today we're going to be chatting about soil mixes and fertilizers. So I get asked quite often what kind of soil mix I use for most of my plants. So I thought it would be a good idea to just make a video about it so you guys have a place to refer back to. So if you are interested in learning about what kind of soil mix I use and what I use to fertilize my plants, then definitely keep on watching. So the first thing that I would definitely recommend is asking yourself, what kind of plant parent are you? And what I mean by that is, are you the kind of person that likes to water and kind of helicopter mom over your plants? Or are you the kind of person that prefers to just water them and then leave them be? Because this will kind of affect what kind of soil mix you are using. I personally am a person who likes to water my plants quite frequently, and I like to check on them and play with them. I like to touch their leaves and kind of just see how they're going. So I do appreciate a soil mix that dries out. Cash is licking an empty peanut butter jar, so if you hear any clicking, that is what it is. He's very happy. I will let him. There you go. I don't give him the whole jar, I only give him like the remnants because it makes him leave me alone for a while I'm filming. So anyway, as I said, I like to kind of helicopter over my plants. So I appreciate a soil mix that is a little bit more airy, a little bit more free draining, and one that dries out quicker so that I am able to water them more often. But if you're a person that likes to kind of just water them and leave them, I would recommend not adding as many amendments to your soil as I do personally. So the first thing that I use in my soil mix is a soil mix. So I know you can completely make your own soil mix by either using a peat moss or a cocoa coir as a base and then adding some amendments to it. But I personally like getting a big bag of really high quality soil from my garden center or big box stores and then adding some chunky things to it to kind of aerate it a little bit more. I will also say that all of the products I'm mentioning, I am not sponsored. These are things that I just buy, and I've been buying them for years. So the soil mix I use is the Osmocote Premium Plus potting mix. And I chose that one years and years ago from my local Bunnings, and it worked out super great for me. It is a little bit more on the pricey side. You can get soil mixes that are a lot more affordable. I believe for a bag around this big, it's about $8, and then they get more expensive the bigger the bag is, obviously. But I found that this one's great because it does have a little bit of like chunk to it already. And it also says on the bag that there is 6 months of feeding for the plants already. So you don't have to fertilize straight away, which is really lovely. So if you are a person that likes to just water your plants and just leave them, I would say getting a super high quality potting mix and just using that is fine because you are just kind of watering it and then leaving it to dry. But there is a chance that the soil can be a little bit too compacted and tight, I guess, for the roots, so there's not as much aeration. So I would just look for a soil that has a little bit of chunk to it already. So me personally, I like to add amendments to my soil mix just to up the quality a little bit more and up the airy nature of it. And the first thing that I like to add to my soil is perlite. So I just grab any perlite that I can find, and it is this like puffed volcanic rock. It is very airy and it kind of just crumbles in your hands if you're using it. So what it does is it adds aeration to the soil. It stops the soil from being too compact, and it also can carry a little bit of water in its little grooves and things like that, so it can add a little bit of extra moisture to a soil, but still keeping it airy. However, perlite is super lightweight. So if you've had it in your soil for a while, you might see that the perlite's kind of floating to the top, which can be quite annoying. That's definitely happened to a lot of my plants. So another alternative you can use is pumice. I've never personally used pumice in a soil mix before, but I've heard they're very, very interchangeable, but the pumice might be a little bit heavier and stay in the soil instead of floating to the top. Another amendment you can use is vermiculite. And unlike perlite, it actually acts more of like a sponge, so it does keep the soil a bit more moisture retentive. So I use vermiculite instead of perlite when I'm potting up more my water-loving plants. So that might be like a peace lily or some of my like propagations or seedlings and things like that. Something that needs a little bit more moisture but would still benefit from having nice airy roots. The second amendment I like to add to my soil is orchid bark. And again, I use the Osmocode orchid bark. It is just very, very chunky. The pieces are quite large, and I personally have quite a few epiphytic plants. And what that means is plants that like to grow on other things, like up trees. So for example, a Hoya, they like to climb other things. They really like a soil mix that is very airy and chunky. I know some Hoya collectors just use orchid barks as a potting medium for their Hoyas, but I personally found that the Hoyas dried out way too quickly, and I had to water them like every few days. And I love my plants, but I don't love them that much that I want to be watering them like every 2 days. So I don't use straight orchid mix for my Hoyas, I do mix it in. The next thing that I like to add to my soil is horticultural charcoal. And I only started using this about 3-4 months ago, I want to say. So I found out that horticultural charcoal can again add aeration to the soil, but it can also eliminate some of those odors, and it also acts as an antibacterial as well. So it's good for kind of preventing root rot. And I would say that this is not a staple, a must in your soil mixture, but it will benefit obviously. Make sure you are getting horticultural charcoal and you're not just getting some random charcoal that you get at the grocery store for barbecues or something, because I don't know if that would work the same way. I mean, maybe it would. You could let me know, but I would definitely recommend getting the charcoal from the garden centers. So the ratio I like to use things, me personally, I like to use about 50% of my premium potting mix, and then I'll use about 50% of amendments. And I don't really measure it out exactly. When I'm making up my soil, I get some soil and then I add some things into it until I get a nice fluffy airy mixture. So most of the time I would say that I would do 30% perlite, 20% orchid bark, and then 10% charcoal. Charcoal you don't need that much of, but perlite and orchid bark will really aerate that soil nicely. So for my cacti and succulents outside, I pretty much just bought a bag of cacti and succulent soil that is from the same brand of my normal indoor potting mix, and honestly that worked totally fine. I found that there was a lot of sand and grit to it. I'm sorry that I don't have the bags of these things to show you, but when I purchase these things, I kind of just make up a whole batch of soil, so I don't keep the packaging around, unfortunately. But I would say if you don't have access to the brands that I'm using, just go to your local big box store and have a look at ones that are really high quality and that maybe say on the packaging that they contain cocoa coir, perlite, orchid barks already, so that you don't have to add too much if you're a little bit wary about spending too much on soil amendments. The next thing I'm going to chat about is my absolute lifesaver, and this is my moisture meter. And when I was first getting into plants, I found it so confusing. I didn't understand how people just knew when their plants were dry. Like when I would touch the soil, it kind of just always felt dry and not wet. I was very confused on when to water my plants. So I would say investing in a soil moisture meter is the best thing you can do. So this cost me, I want to say $12 from Bunnings. And honestly, you just stick the probe straight into soil and it will tell you on the gauge if your soil is dry, moist, or wet. Pretty straightforward, but you definitely don't want to water your plants when they are dry or even moist. Your water loving plants, I would say you would water them when it just starts hitting the dry side, but most of my plants I wait till they're at a 1 or 2 on the moisture meter scale for them to be watered, because I have had a lot of root rot issues, and I even have a song that I sing about root rot in my house. Root rot is the killer of all your plants. Yeah, I don't know, I just literally every time I find root rot, I just sing that. Is that very strange? Very strange. I even get Steven singing it. So yes, please get a moisture meter if you are unsure about when to water your plants, and this will just save your life, honestly. Also, some people say that they don't work because they put a moisture meter in a glass of water and it doesn't say wet. They are not designed for that. I believe it's the ions and the pressure in the soil makes this work to tell you when it's wet or dry. So it's not gonna work if you just stick it into a glass of water. That's probably just gonna break your moisture meter, so don't do that. So now that we have discussed the soil and soil amendments that I use, I thought it would be handy for me to include what kind of fertilizer I use in my houseplants collection. So as I said, my soil that I purchased has about 6 months of feeding in it already. So it has some of those nutrients that the plants need. So if I have just recently repotted a plant, I will not necessarily add some fertilizer in there unless I can see they're like bursting with growth and I think that they could use maybe a little bit more. But you don't want to over fertilize your plants. Please do not think that it's going to help them grow better. It is actually going to burn them. You can burn the roots and burn the leaves and it can kill the plant or just make it look very, very sad. Another thing is you really don't want to fertilize your plants when they are not actively growing. So you might think that in the middle of winter, your plant is doing nothing, and maybe if you just give it a little bit of fertilizer, it will produce beautiful leaves for you. Unfortunately, I have found that is not the way it works, and you can risk burning the leaves. So I fertilize my plants when they are showing active growth. If that is in the winter time, then sure, I will give them a bit of fertilizer. If they are not actively growing, then I will kind of hold back on that. So I use 2 different products as like a fertilizer, and I will start off with this one here, which is Seasol. I believe this is like a seaweed concentration. Yeah, a seaweed solution. And this one is very popular in Australia. I know pretty much everyone in the plant Facebook pages use this product. However, this is not a fertilizer. This is a soil conditioner. So what this is designed to do is to help with things like transplant shock. It's supposed to add some more beneficial bacteria to the soil and kind of just help make sure that soil is really, really high quality. Yeah, so it says that it enhances root growth. It helps deal with pests, heat, and frost. So say if your plants are getting a little bit of shock from the temperature change or just from like shipping damage, I love to use this. And honestly, I don't measure this out because I've been using it for so long. I kind of just know how much to use, but it does have some instructions on the back on, you know, mils and things to use. I literally just put a little bit into my watering can and I will mix it in with my fertilizer so that it looks like a weak black tea kind of solution. It's not super dark, but it is, you know, like a weak black tea. So a little bit transparent still. So the fertilizer that I mix in with my Seasol is Powerfeed, and these are actually by the same brand. I'm not gonna lie, they smell really bad. They smell like fish, and when I fertilize my house just smells like fish for the rest of the afternoon. So if you don't like that smell, I would definitely avoid using a fish or seaweed fertilizer, but I found that these work so well. So this one here is a traditional fertilizer, unlike Seasol. So it has nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And I believe those 3 ingredients in varying amounts can help with leaf growth or from flowering, but I honestly not too sure about like the concentration wise. I've just used this all the time and I absolutely love it. I even use this on my cacti and succulents outside, and this one I find really helps pump out those new leaves. So when I like to water my plants, I actually water them first with just normal water, and then I will go in with a little bit of fertilizer over the top. I've just heard, I'm not sure if it is true, but if your roots are really dry already and then you put fertilizer straight on them, it can shock them or burn them. So I'm just erring on the side of caution and watering them with normal water first and then using my fertilizer. And I would say when I am fertilizing my plants, I fertilize them about every second watering when they need it. So that kind of adds up to be about every 2 weeks-ish or so, give or take on the plant. Plants like my Hoyas, I don't fertilize them as often because I heard they're not as heavy feeders. And a lot of my Hoyas are quite slow growers, so I don't give them as much fertilizer as I would like a philodendron or my pothos or things like that. So I absolutely love these products. I mix them together into my watering can and oh my gosh, it is so good, so good. Let me know if you're from the US or other countries if you have something like this Seasol, because as I said, it is super popular in Australia, but there is that misconception that this is a fertilizer when it is not. So if you are using Seasol, please mix it in with your Powerfeed and then create like a beautiful concoction for your plants to survive. All right, so I have been yammering on for far too long. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I have tried to be as comprehensive as I can be, but you know, I don't write notes for these videos, literally just whatever comes out of the top of my head. So if I have missed anything, then definitely leave me a comment and I will try my best to answer your questions. If you enjoyed this video, then please hit the thumbs up. And if you haven't already, then hit subscribe because I post 2 plant videos every single week, and I'll see you guys in my next one. All right, bye.